Turn 3. You tap out and cast Militia Bugler. The trigger goes on the stack. You're about to look at the top 4 cards of your library, and somewhere in there, hopefully, is a creature with power 2 or less, waiting to jump into your hand. But is Militia Bugler a reliable card selection tool, or are you just rolling a die every time you cast it? Today, we're answering that with exact mathematics. No guessing or approximations, just hypergeometric probabilities. Let's find out. We'll cover 6 parts. First, the theoretical framework, how we model the deck and the trigger. Then, we derive the probability distribution under both the player's perspective and the opponent's. This is where a beautiful algebraic trick makes the math collapse into something surprisingly simple. After that, we work through a concrete turn 3 example, run a sensitivity analysis, and close with strategic takeaways. Militia Bugler enters the battlefield. You look at the top 4 cards, you may put a creature with power 2 or less into your hand, and the rest go to the bottom. You get at most 1 creature, even if you see 3. This gives us 2 probability questions. First, hit probability. What's the chance you find at least 1 eligible creature? And second, selection depth. When you do hit, how often do you actually get to choose among multiple creatures? Now, to model this, we split the deck into 2 classes: eligible creatures, anything with power 2 or less, and ineligible cards, everything else: lands, instants, sorceries, and importantly, creatures with power greater than 2. On screen, you can see all the notation we'll use throughout the analysis, with a note by E and I, respectively, the constants related to eligible and ineligible cards in the deck list, and with subscripts, the corresponding game state variables. If you want the full detail, pause the video and refer to the table. The key point is that the trigger samples 4 cards without a replacement from a finite library. That's a hypergeometric distribution. Under complete information, the player knows exactly how many eligible creatures are in their hand, and therefore in the library, so the library composition is fully determined. We let x be the number of eligible creatures among the 4 cards revealed. The probability distribution function is the standard hypergeometric formula. The numerator counts ways to pick k eligible and 4 minus k ineligible cards from the library. The denominator is the total number of 4 card samples. From this, we derive 3 key quantities. The hit probability, 1 minus the probability that all 4 cards are ineligible, is the fraction of 4 card samples drawn entirely from the wrong half of the library. The selection depth, the probability of seeing 2 or more eligible creatures, given that you've hit at least 1. This tells you how often you actually get a meaningful choice. And the expected value, 4 times the eligible density in the library, simple and intuitive. Now, here is where things get interesting. The opponent doesn't know how many eligible creatures the player is holding in hand. So, we need to average overall possible hand compositions using the law of total probability. The result is the summation on screen, 4 binomial coefficients multiplied together, summed over every possible value of E. It looks messy, but it simplifies beautifully. 2 classic identities do the work. The absorption identity let us rearrange paired binomial coefficients. Then, the van der Monde convolution closes the entire sum. The incomplete information distribution is itself hypergeometric, sampling from the unseen eligible and ineligible cards, same sample size of 4. Here's the punchline: the hand composition drops out entirely. The opponent doesn't need to know what the player is holding. The 4 cards examined by Militia Bugler are probabilistically equivalent to a random draw from all unseen cards, regardless of hand size. This is practically powerful. The expected value becomes independent of age, and the opponent can estimate the hit probability using nothing but publicly observed information. Let's put real numbers to this. We take a typical Pauper Winnie White deck, 26 eligible creatures, 34 ineligible cards. Militia Bugler is cast on turn 3. At the moment the trigger resolves, 2 eligible creatures and 3 lands are visible on board, and the player holds 2 eligible creatures in hand. On the play, hand size is 4, library is 51 cards. Complete information gives a hit probability of 90.50%. Incomplete information gives 90.75%, nearly identical. On the draw, 1 more card is in hand, 1 fewer in library. Complete information hit probability rises slightly to 91.11%, but the incomplete information result is exactly the same, 90.77, because the visible cards haven't changed, and the van der Monde simplification makes hand size irrelevant. Same visible card, same incomplete information answer, regardless of play or draw. And the selection depth on the play under complete information is 64.45%, nearly 2/3 of the time. When Bugler hits, you get to pick. The bar charts on screen shows the full probability comparison. The distribution peaks at k equals 2, and the two information regimes are nearly indistinguishable, differences under 0.6 percentage points. Now, two practical questions. First, how many eligible creatures should you run? The table on screen varies E from 20 to 30, holding the game state fixed. At 20 eligible creatures, the hit rate is about 81%. At our baseline of 26, it's 91%. At 30, it's 95%. Each additional pair of eligible creatures buys you roughly 3 percentage points of hit probability and about 6 points of selection depth. But notice the diminishing returns on hit rate as it approaches certainty. Second, does Bugler get worse as the game goes on? We test 3 game states, early, mid, and late, and the answer is no. Hit probability stays between 90.8 and 91.4%. The eligible density among unseen cards hovers near 44% throughout. Militia Bugler is consistently reliable at every stage of the game. 4 takeaways. Density drives reliability. At 24 to 26 eligible creatures, you are hitting between 87 to 91% of the time. Every creature with power greater than 2 that you include is functionally a blank for the Bugler trigger. Selection depth is the hidden value. When Militia Bugler hits, you choose among multiple creatures 64% of the time. That's not just card advantage, that's card selection, finding the right creature at the right moment. The card is stable, less than 1 percentage points of variation across game stages. Early game, late game, doesn't matter, the Bugler performs. And the Van der Monde simplification is practically useful. Your opponent can predict your hit probability with high accuracy using only public information. Hand size is irrelevant. Militia Bugler is a 2/3 vigilance for 3 mana that digs 4 cards deep. The math says it succeeds 9 times out of 10, and 2/3 of those times you get to choose. 9 out of 10. That's not luck, that's deck building.